The atmosphere inside the Ed Sullivan Theatre was electric, charged with the kind of anticipation that only a royal guest could command. Prince Harry had been scheduled for Stephen Colbert's late-night talk show for weeks, billed as an unmissable appearance to promote his ongoing humanitarian work and to discuss the latest global projects he was championing. From the moment he arrived, there was tension, not the usual nerves of a celebrity on press tour, but something taut beneath the surface, like a wire pulled too tight. He greeted crew members with his usual calm demeanor, but his eyes scanned everything, calculated. Colbert, for his part, was prepping backstage, rehearsing his monologue and sharpening a few jokes he knew might hit sensitive spots. This wasn't going to be a casual chat. Everyone knew it. The audience didn't. They were just here for a show. But behind the curtain, egos, narratives, and reputations were already colliding long before the cameras rolled. As the opening credits blared and applause filled the room, Colbert strode on stage, smiling wide, disarming as ever. His monologue was sharp, quick, and laced with jabs at politicians, pop culture, and, inevitably, the royal family. "You know it's a weird time when Prince Harry's doing more interviews than Taylor Swift," he quipped, earning roaring laughter. But there was a subtle shift in the room as that punchline hit, laughs mixed with sideways glances. Prince Harry, watching from backstage, didn't flinch, but his jaw visibly tensed. When he was introduced moments later, walking on stage to thunderous applause, he wore a practiced smile. They shook hands, Colbert gave him a hug, and they sat. For a while, everything moved smoothly. They talked about his new book, his podcast, his wildlife charity in Africa. But then Colbert pivoted. "You've walked away from royal duties, Harry, but do you ever think you walked away from responsibility too?" The audience gasped, not loudly, but enough. Harry blinked once. Responsibility to what? A tabloid fantasy. The crowd laughed nervously. And that's when the tone shifted, for good. The tension snapped like a dry twig. Colbert, always the provocateur, smiled but leaned forward. "Some say that being royal means enduring scrutiny. That it comes with the crown, doesn't it?" Harry didn't smile. "And what about the trauma? The lies? The security threats? Is that also part of the crown?" The room was silent. The audience wasn't sure whether to clap, stay quiet, or disappear. Colbert raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting the firmness of Harry's response. "Look, I'm just saying," he began, but Harry cut in. "No, you're implying. And it's dangerous." A stunned pause followed. The air was suddenly thick, heavy, and sharp. A producer offstage motioned for the host to steer it back to lighter topics, but Colbert wasn't done. "So you don't regret anything?" he asked. Harry's eyes narrowed. "I regret trusting people who weaponize jokes as facts," he said coldly. That was the moment. The invisible line had been crossed. Colbert shifted in his seat, and for the first time, he looked less like a late-night host and more like a man realizing he'd stepped too far. The camera stayed fixed on Harry's face, the audience holding its collective breath. Then, unexpectedly, Harry reached for his microphone, slowly unclipping it from his lapel. "If this is going to be a setup, I won't be part of it," he said plainly. Colbert tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Prince Harry, this is just a conversation." But Harry wasn't laughing. "No, this is another stage where I'm supposed to play the joke so others can clap." He stood, the wire dangling loosely from his jacket. A few people in the crowd applauded, unsure whether they were witnessing real tension or a scripted stunt. But backstage, panic ensued. Staff scrambled as Prince Harry walked toward the wings. One executive producer approached, gently trying to de-escalate. "Please, just finish the interview," she pleaded. Harry paused, looked toward the still rolling cameras, and simply said, "I've said enough." Within minutes, the feed was cut, replaced by an emergency musical segment. The network went to commercial. Online, chaos erupted. Someone in the live audience had recorded the moment and uploaded it instantly. The clip went viral, gaining over 1 million views in under an hour. The trending tag #Harry vs Colbert dominated every platform. News outlets picked it up before the show even ended. CNN ran the banner, "Prince Harry abruptly leaves Colbert interview, clash over royal responsibilities." Meanwhile, backstage, security walked Harry to the elevator. He declined a car from the show and walked out the side entrance alone, disappearing into a waiting black SUV. Colbert, still sitting in his chair, sipped from his mug and glanced toward the now empty guest seat. "Well, that escalated faster than a royal engagement," he muttered on air when the cameras returned. The crowd laughed uneasily. No jokes could clean up what had just happened. Because for once, a late-night show had become a battlefield, and neither side was left smiling. By the next morning, the story had consumed every media cycle. Talk shows, podcasts, radio, all dissecting the moment frame by frame. Some praised Harry for standing his ground. Others accused him of being too sensitive, of walking into the lion's den and then complaining about the roar. Colbert's team released a short, neutral statement: "We respect Prince Harry and regret that the interview did not unfold as intended." But the damage was already done. British tabloids had a field day. "The runaway royal storms off again," screamed one headline. Across the Atlantic, supporters called it a power move, applauding Harry for refusing to play into the same media narratives he'd spent years escaping. The incident became more than a talk show moment, it became a symbol. A breaking point. The perfect storm where a prince, tired of being the punchline, finally walked off the stage, this time not for the cameras, but for himself. The producers didn't have a contingency plan for this. Prince Harry, standing with his microphone unclipped, had just made the kind of statement that couldn't be edited out or softened in post-production. The audience didn't clap. They didn't boo. They just watched. Colbert blinked, leaned back slightly in his chair, and gave a forced chuckle that didn't match his usual comedic timing. "Okay, that's definitely one for the books," he said, mostly to himself. Harry didn't reply. He simply gave a small nod, turned, and walked toward the edge of the stage, his footsteps audible in the shocked silence. A stagehand tried to intercept him, headset sliding halfway off his ear. "Sir, wait, just a moment, please," but Harry kept moving. Security, alerted by the silent chaos backstage, began coordinating his exit discreetly. Meanwhile, in the control room, a director yelled over the headset, "Go to the B segment. Cue music. Now." The feed suddenly cut to an awkward pre-recorded performance by an indie band, while inside the theater, staff scrambled to salvage what remained of the taping. Harry exited through the side corridor and didn't look back. Outside, paparazzi had already gathered. The news had spread like wildfire, faster than anyone expected. Clips of the confrontation, filmed on shaky phones, began hitting social media. Trending tags included "Harry walks out," #Colbert clash, no more jokes. Inside his SUV, Prince Harry stared out the tinted window, not speaking. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cursed. But in a world that thrives on noise, his silence said everything. The second Harry stood up, the studio atmosphere cracked like thunder. He didn't shout. He didn't storm. But the gesture of removing the microphone from his collar, slowly, deliberately, had the impact of a slap across the face of the show's entire production. The audience let out a confused murmur. Stephen Colbert shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward the producer's booth, silently asking what to do. But there was no plan for this. This wasn't a prank, wasn't a segment. Prince Harry, with a restrained but unmistakably firm tone, said, "I agreed to a conversation, not another ambush dressed as entertainment." Colbert attempted levity, "Come on, Your Highness, we roast everyone here. You're not special." That line landed like lead. The room froze. Harry paused, narrowed his eyes, and responded, "That's exactly the problem, Stephen. People like you think the crown is a costume for your sketches. You don't see the blood that came with it." Gasps. Not laughs. Not claps. Just raw, palpable discomfort. And then, without another word, he stepped off the carpeted stage and walked past the curtain. Security flanked him instantly, not to stop him, but to ensure the press outside didn't turn it into a feeding frenzy. Backstage, crew members whispered frantically, trying to figure out what had just happened. "Keep rolling," one of the directors barked. "We might need this footage." Meanwhile, Colbert sat frozen, blinking under the studio lights, the smile gone from his face. "Well," he muttered, "that's going to make tomorrow's headlines." He looked straight at the camera, trying to recover. "We'll be right back." But everyone watching knew, the damage was already irreversible. Prince Harry didn't yell. He didn't point fingers or lose his temper. But his decision to stand up, unclip his microphone, and walk away from the interview cut deeper than any shouted argument. The studio lights didn't flicker, but it felt like they dimmed. Audience members sat in stunned silence as the royal figure turned and strode toward the edge of the stage, his silhouette slicing through the perfectly orchestrated world of late-night television. Colbert leaned forward, mouth slightly open, clearly unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. "Harry, hey, it's just a show," he called after him, half apology, half reprimand. But Harry didn't turn back. As he exited the stage, production staff moved quickly, some whispering into headsets, others rushing to reposition cameras. The show went to a sudden and jarring commercial break. Meanwhile, outside the soundstage, a black vehicle was already idling. It was clear someone had anticipated this possibility. The prince walked briskly through a side hallway, face tight, saying nothing to the assistants who trailed him. Cameras caught him entering the SUV, but he kept his gaze down. Within minutes, clips from the taping were leaked online. Though the official feed had been cut, several audience members had filmed the explosive moment. Hashtags like Harry walks off and Colbert clash were trending worldwide before the show had even finished airing. Opinions flew in from every direction, pundits, fans, royal experts, and celebrities all chiming in. Some called Harry brave for rejecting what they described as a media ambush. Others said he was thin-skinned and dramatic. But one thing was clear: the rules of the game had just changed. Outside the studio, the night air felt colder than expected. Prince Harry's security detail moved fast, forming a quiet wall between him and the cluster of paparazzi already swarming like moths to a flame. Inside, Stephen Colbert was still seated in his chair, visibly shaken, tapping his fingers on the armrest while producers surrounded him with headsets and cue cards. The crowd didn't know if the show would continue or be cancelled mid-recording. But the real storm was already brewing online. Within 5 minutes, a shaky vertical video taken by an audience member hit X, formerly Twitter, showing the exact moment Harry pulled off his mic and calmly said, "You don't get to laugh at trauma just because it makes good TV." That line alone ignited a firestorm of commentary. Thousands of posts flooded in, some accusing Colbert of crossing the line, others claiming Harry was too sensitive for the spotlight he once claimed to reject. News outlets scrambled to confirm what had happened, and hashtags like Prince vs Colbert, Royal Exit Live, and Harry Unscripted began trending globally. Meanwhile, in the black SUV rolling through New York's midnight streets, Harry sat quietly, phone in hand but untouched. His team said nothing. They didn't need to. This wasn't a PR misstep or a media stunt, it was a man who had clearly reached his limit. A notification lit up on his screen. Breaking: Prince Harry leaves Colbert's set mid-interview. Tensions mount over royal boundaries. He locked the phone again. It wasn't about damage control anymore. It was about dignity. And maybe, just maybe, drawing the line once and for all.